so it was an article about it, and I held on to it until Valentine's Day to tell you guys. Anyway, we are going all the way back to February 16th, 1974. 17-year-old Carla Walker and her boyfriend, 18-year-old Rodney McCoy, had gone on a double date that night. She was wearing her promise ring and a pretty blue party dress. Described as blonde and pretty, a popular student at Western Hills High School in Benbrook, which is a suburb of the south side of Fort Worth, Texas. She was described by her older sister as a little spitfire. I hate it when that happens. Carla and Rodney were the typical high school couple, cheerleader, football quarterback. They were described as having a great relationship, and people said that they never fought about anything, and that to me sounds absolutely crazy, because I think Sean and I fight like every week over dumb stuff, and I'm pretty sure we're mad at each other like every day. So anyway, that night, February 16th, they had gone to a seafood restaurant with another couple and then attended a dance. On the way home, Carla had to use the restroom, so she had Rodney stop at a bowling alley that was nearby called Brunswick Ridgely Bowl. After using the restroom, the two were kind of parked in the parking lot. I read it was the back parking lot, but I don't know how accurate that is. And they were like flirting and, kissing, and Rodney recalls that Carla was leaning up against the car door, and it was suddenly jerked open by a stranger. Rodney reached for Carla in order to keep her from being pulled from the car by this stranger, and this man who had opened the door immediately started striking Rodney in the head with an object. Rodney recalled Carla screaming, "Quit hitting him, quit hitting him," and he remembers blood running down his face. Before he lost consciousness, he remembers his assailant pointing a gun in his face and trying to pull the trigger several times, but the gun did not go off. And the last thing that Rodney remembers is Carla screaming, "Go get my dad." When Rodney woke up, he decided that's exactly what he had to do, and he started his car and drove right over to Carla's house. He was so woozy and out of it. In fact, he almost had a couple of car accidents on his way there. Carla's family remembers seeing Rodney standing at the door after he rang the doorbell several times, and he was just bloody all over and screaming. They took her, they got her, they took her. Carla's mom, Charlene, called an ambulance for Rodney, and her husband immediately jumped into the car to go to the bowling alley to search for Carla. At this point, an extensive search began. Carla's family just really waited on bated breath to hopefully hear some news, and Rodney stayed at the house with them. They were just hoping that whoever this man was that had taken her would just throw her out of his car and she could come home safely. For the next few days, the family waited anxiously for any word of Carla, and the police searched by foot, on horseback, with their cars, and a helicopter was even enlisted. Carla's mother started a tradition of touching Carla's portrait every morning and saying good morning, and I thought just, like, it squeezed my heart a little. Unfortunately, 2 Fort Worth police officers that were out searching culverts and pastures near an area of Lake Benbrook discovered the partially clad body of Carla Walker. Her parents were able to identify her via the jewelry that she had on, and they did this before they were ever shown her body, and I cannot imagine being called down to identify someone. Although the police did discover a number of clues, these were not all released to the public, and even though this case is solved, a lot of that stuff has not been revealed because the trial hasn't happened yet, but we'll get to that. Police did disclose autopsy findings, which, from what I gathered, said that she had been deceased for close to 2.5 days, and she was sexually assaulted and strangled to death. They also found a high level of morphine in her system, but I did not see anything about her being injected with it or it being pills, but I'll talk to you about that in a little. Of course, this discovery was absolutely terrible for the family, and Carla's brother Jim, which is actually my brother's name too, remembers just hearing his mother scream, and Rodney remembers collapsing on the floor when he heard the news. Now, Rodney, for being struck over the head and passing out, gave the police quite a clear description of this abductor. Caucasian, average height, slender, clean cut. And this man also left a pretty big clue behind. In fact, it was in the parking lot of the bowling alley right next to Carla's purse. It was the magazine for a .22 caliber Ruger pistol. Police began questioning people that owned this type of gun, and one of them was a man named Glenn Mccurley. He lived near this bowling alley and really didn't have any type of criminal history, except he had been arrested for stealing a car once, so not totally innocent. He happened to be off work the night that Carla was abducted, and his wife happened to be out of town, but other than owning received this letter in 1974, the year she was murdered. And they asked the author of the letter to come forward via Twitter, which is so weird to me, but I guess social media is working wonders these days. I found an interview with Carla's brother Jim, and he said, "My mom suffered incredible silence. Back in the 70s, you didn't have Dr. Phil showing up at your door or all of this group support. I watched her, I saw her, and I knew that she had become clinically depressed. A poor woman. I mean, I have seen how my mother has handled my brother's death, and we know what happened to him. I can't imagine the strain on someone. I just can't. As many cases I read about, I just can't get my head around it." So Jim was determined to grow up to become a police officer. He wanted to work his way onto the cold case squad and solve his sister's murder, and he was accepted as a police recruit. But he realized that he was losing his eyesight, and he dropped out because he did not want to be a liability on the police force. He was later declared legally blind and decided to work as a rape crisis volunteer. Rodney fell in love with someone else, got married, had some kiddos. Carla's father died, then her mother died, and Jim made a promise to his mother on her deathbed, and he said, "I am never giving up. Never." Interest in Carla's case continued. It was featured on podcasts, it's been featured on YouTube, and Jim just kept talking about his sister. And then last year, in 2020, there was a breakthrough in this case. DNA evidence recovered from Carla's clothing, mostly her bra, was sent to a company called Othram, a private lab. This DNA profile created at Othram was used to narrow down the search to 3 brothers with the last name Mccurley. According to the police, Glenn Samuel Mccurley had been identified as a person of interest during the initial investigation. Remember, he was the man who owned the .22 caliber Ruger pistol that matched the magazine found at the bowling alley. Detectives spoke to Glenn again, but they did not really pursue him actively until this DNA profile match was found. Police investigated his trash and took some from the bin outside of his house in July of 2020, and they were able to determine that the items matched the DNA profile found on Carla's clothing. On September 10th, the police say they returned to Glenn's home and they spoke with both him and his wife, during which time he stuck to his story. He didn't kill anybody, and he didn't know a Carla Walker. He willingly agreed to supply a DNA sample, and 6 days later, the police were notified that they matched the DNA found on Carla Walker's bra. A warrant for capital murder was issued, and Mr. Mccurley was taken into custody without incident. Jim recalled that when he was given the word, he just thought, finally, after 46 years, finally. I don't really know how it happened, but Mr. Glenn Mccurley did an interview with the local radio station from jail, and he said he was really drunk the night that Carla was abducted. He saw her in a car and that Rodney was smacking her around. He said that she was screaming and he went over there to try and rescue her. He opened the door in order to get Rodney off of her. He said that he pulled Carla into his car and drove off. Then he proceeded to say that she hugged him and he mistook it for something else and that he just didn't mean to do it. That was all the details that I got, and I'm assuming that they don't want any more released until the trial. But I don't know how you don't mean to sexually assault and strangle someone like that. Now again, this guy doesn't have any other criminal record, and the police believe that this was just a random thing, that Glenn and Carla did not know each other, and he had lived a relatively normal life, got married, had 2 children, and that he was not a suspect in any other crime. Glenn Mccurley has not gone to trial yet, so he has not been sentenced as of right now that I could find. But I'm imagining that in this global pandemic, they're probably not doing many trials due to the close confines of a courtroom. I don't really have an opinion. I don't know about. I've been saying that a lot lately, guys. I don't know that I necessarily think. Okay, with the exception of the morphine that we'll talk about in a minute, I don't know if I believe that this man set out to murder her. Do I think that Rodney was beating on her and that Glenn saved her? Not necessarily. I think he's trying to cover his booty. There would have been, if Rodney was smacking her or beating her or punching her or whatever, there potentially would have been some kind of markings. I don't know if there were, because the autopsy report was not released in full, and honestly I really tried to avoid reading those things unless I just cannot find anything else. Now for the morphine, it's weird to me. It's just weird. I don't really think that morphine was something that you could easily access in 1974 enough that you could give it to someone else in order to abduct them or assault them or kill them or whatever. I could be wrong, but I know that morphine is quite readily available as a pain management tool these days. Maybe he thought that he could inject her to calm her down, and she was allergic to it, and she overdosed and died, or had an anaphylactic reaction or whatever and died. Maybe he just, maybe I'm not excusing anything, but maybe he was only intending to assault her, not that that makes it any better, but, and accidentally killed her with the morphine. Again, I don't know if it was morphine pills or an injection. I did not find that information in the articles that I read, just that she had morphine in her system and they believed it was from this man. I don't know how long morphine stays in your system, but I believe that if she had had some kind of medical thing before that, she might not have been at a dance that night. I can only imagine living with this, poor Rodney probably has some serious PTSD, being beaten over the head and just not being able to catch this person taking your girlfriend literally out of your arms. I cannot get my head around that. I really couldn't find much about how long they'd been together or anything like that, but I know that her family knew him very well and they really liked him and they were like engaged to be engaged. So I'm assuming that they were together for a significant amount of time. I'm happy that he found love again and was able to move on with his life. I know that a lot of people have difficulties moving on after things like this. I'm glad that they finally solved this case for her family. 46 years is a long time to wait for some justice. I am very sad that her mother and father did not live to see the day that it happened. I do find it weird that this guy had no other priors or any other things history leading up to this. But thank you guys so much for watching this. Please drop your suggestions for what you would like to see other than more content, because that's happening on my channel for Patreon Appreciation Day. I went to my mom's house today. I was hoping I could convince her to do a small video to upload here with you guys. I'm gonna try again, but she doesn't think that she is pretty, and she doesn't like to take pictures or be on camera. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll notice that all of my pictures of her, well, most of them, are from the side because I take them without her noticing. Because I want them. I wish that I had years of photos of my dad, and I do not. I have about 6. So I just steal them whenever I want from my mom. Anyway, thank you guys. I'm just rambling on here. I would love to know what you think. Sorry about uploading this earlier today.